So I guess you could say that I've always been obsessed with firefighters since I was a kid. I mean, what's not to love about them? They're part of this unshakable brotherhood, and it's like being a member in a really cool gang or something. If you think about it, they live together, cook together, and clean together, and drive around in these shiny, bright red trucks with sirens, and they have these neat uniforms with reflective stripes and lots of other gear. But then when you get to what their actual job is, to fight fires, ultimately their enemy is fire, and how cool is that? Police officers are there to protect and serve our communities as well, but it's a different sort of thing where fighting crime is a little murkier, and justice isn't always served. And I mean, not putting down police officers, but firemen, they seem to have a much cleaner mandate and a simpler objective when they go to work, and that is just to save people, and that I find to be truly awesome. They pull people out of wrecked cars with the jaws of life. They provide emergency medical treatment, and they even climb trees to save cats. And then they all go back to their fire station, cook a meal together, watch TV, and hang out. And that sounds like a pretty cool job. In the mid-1990s, a good friend of mine gave me a box of back issues of this magazine called With New York Firefighters, which was basically just a monthly magazine for firefighters. And he found it at a garage sale, and he knew that I was a painter and that I was always looking for new images to paint. And I painted from photographs, and he thought I would appreciate the photography in the magazine. I did a lot. The photos were breathtaking, dramatic images of men holding hoses and fighting these ruthless, blazing fires, risking their lives. And I was totally fascinated by them. So I began painting a series of paintings based on these images. Originally, the series wasn't just dedicated to worshiping firemen and my lifelong love of firefighters. But in addition, it explored other themes that interested me, such as masculinity and iconic images of men in society, and playing around with the idea of gender roles. Some of the paintings were even poking fun of firefighters and playing with the whole boys club kind of aspect of it. And so I had a lot of fun with that series, and it was just something that I did in the end of the 1990s. I will never forget that morning in September 2001. I remember being woken up earlier than I had wanted to get up because I just kept hearing sirens going down my block. And I got out of bed and took my dog out for a walk. I live on 13th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue, so I went down to 6th Avenue like I always do, and my dog was doing her business, and I noticed that on the street, all these people were out of the stores and shops, and people were looking downtown. And when I looked down the street at what they were looking at, I was just completely stunned. The World Trade Center was not only on fire, but there was this huge sort of gaping hole and in the building, like huge, and smoke was just gushing out of it. And it was such an insane thing to behold. And as I was looking at the one tower that I could see on fire, the other tower in the background just suddenly exploded, and the second plane hit right at that moment, and it made this sound like, and at that point, everybody on the street just like screamed, and all chaos broke loose after that. So I rushed my dog back to the apartment, and I grabbed my camera and ran outside again, and I didn't even really think about what I was doing, and like a lot of New Yorkers, I just found myself sort of walking down towards the World Trade Centers and taking point-and-shoot photos as I was walking down. It was like my eyes couldn't believe what I was seeing, so maybe subconsciously the reaction to take a lot of photos made sense as a way to record and confirm what my eyes couldn't begin to comprehend. So I walked down, almost all the way down to the buildings, and close enough to where I could see these tiny bodies like little leaves falling down from the upper floors. It was definitely the worst thing I've ever seen in my life with my own eyes. You can't believe what you're seeing. It didn't make any sense, and then shortly after that moment, the first tower collapsed and all hell broke loose. And I was close enough to to see these mobs of people running out of like white ash, like towards me on the street, and I had to jump up on top of a car to avoid like getting trampled by them. And right as soon as I could, I got out of there and just came back to my apartment. So looking back on that day and what I did, I was definitely like felt like a zombie, just sort of going through the motions. But I think the act of grabbing my camera and taking photos sort of was my first coping mechanism. My first survival impulse was a creative one. And I was just doing what I always did, which was just document things around me in my life. From my experience, making things and creating art has always been a lifesaver, something I've always turned to in troubled times. I've used creativity, whether it's painting, photography, or music, as a way to sort of paint myself out of a corner, so to speak, or to express emotions that I have deep inside that I can't put into words, and also to capture a moment that I don't fully understand and need another window into. I learned in my mid-20s that I could use my artistic side not only as a coping mechanism to help me get through the day, but also I made a connection between making things and in healing myself. I was always interested in an artist's ability to save themselves through their art. So it was something that I was interested in, and I knew from my own experiences that it worked. So in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, I had this feeling, and the feeling of creating something was something that I wanted to share with my community and with my friends. In September of 2001, I found myself living in a shell-shocked New York City. It was a really surreal time to be here, and that day was so traumatic for everyone. But to be a New Yorker and to witness in person what happened was really like devastating and life-changing in so many ways. So in the weeks that followed, many of my friends and neighbors, myself included, we were all walking around in sort of a daze, and it was then that I felt a strong urge to start a public art project, or to start a project that gave my community a chance to come together and allow people to express their feelings, and also make something special and memorial at the same time. So All Hands really is the first community art project that I'd ever started. I felt compelled to do something, to make anything to keep me from pacing around in my apartment going crazy, and I definitely wanted to share this outlet with my friends. The whole experience hit very close to home. I didn't have to look very far for examples of people's loss, because I was really touched by everybody who knew somebody that was missing. There were so many people putting up these copies of Xeroxes of people that they knew that were missing, and they were all over downtown New York. And I remember these images that almost acted as like a temporary memorial to the people that had worked, either worked in the World Trade Center or had gone down there to help in the rescue and lost their lives. And even closer to home, my fire station on 13th Street, Ladder Company 3, lost 13 guys that day, and I walk by that station all the time, and I'm familiar with the people that work there, and it was just heart-wrenching to walk by the station in the aftermath. And I mean, these guys were the first responders that day, and it was their job to put themselves in harm's way to help people. And as people were running down those stairs and out of the buildings, the members of Ladder Company 3 were going up and in, and just like couldn't stop thinking about that these guys were actually going up as the buildings came down. It's just crazy.